A black woman in a $40 sweater extended her hand to the white CEO. "Mr. Thornton, I'm Brenda Hayes. I'd love to discuss." He refused to take it, stepped back like she carried a disease. "I don't shake hands with the help." His voice echoed across the ballroom. "Security? Who let this black woman in here? This is an investor gala, not a soup kitchen." He turned to his colleagues, laughing. "Look at her clothes. People like her sneak in, pretend they belong, then cry racism when we throw them out." 50 wealthy guests watched, some laughed, some filmed. No one defended her. He refused to shake her hand tonight. But the next morning, when he walked into his own boardroom, he would find her sitting in his chair. 6 hours earlier, Brenda Hayes had been sitting alone in her corner office on the 42nd floor of a downtown Baltimore high-rise, watching the late afternoon sun stretch across the harbor. The view never got old, not because it was beautiful, but because it reminded her how far she had come. As a child, she'd stood on that same waterfront with her mother, staring through chain-link fences, dreaming without permission. Her office was quiet, but the walls told a loud story. 2 framed degrees, Howard University and Wharton, earned through scholarships, night shifts, and relentless discipline. A photograph of her ringing the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. Another of her shaking hands with a global business icon at a charity gala, though most people never noticed her in the picture. That anonymity had always worked in her favor. Brenda Hayes did not advertise her power. Hayes Capital Partners managed over $4 billion in assets. The firm had quietly acquired stakes in companies most investors overlooked, then reshaped them from the inside. Brenda didn't chase attention. She let underestimation do the heavy lifting. Across from her desk sat Cassie Moore, her chief operating officer, flipping through documents on a tablet. "The acquisition finalizes tomorrow morning at 9, Cassie said carefully. "Once the filing clears, we'll control 55% of Thornton Ridley Technologies." Brenda nodded, calm as still water. "Does the board know?" "No, neither does Bradley Thornton." Cassie hesitated. "You're still planning to attend the gala tonight?" "Yes. I can arrange security, or at least make sure they know who you are." Brenda stood and walked to the window. "No announcements, no introductions. I want to see who Bradley Thornton is when he thinks no one important is watching." That evening, she opened her walk-in closet filled with tailored suits and designer dresses. She passed them all. Instead, she reached for a simple cream sweater she'd bought years ago at a department store. $40, comfortable, invisible. She fastened an old watch around her wrist, her mother's. Worn through decades of nursing shifts, quiet strength ticking steadily beneath glass scratched by sacrifice. Some tests didn't require words. At 7:30 p.m., Brenda stepped out of an Uber in front of the Grand Monarch Hotel. No entourage, no spotlight. Just a woman walking into a room where power believed it could recognize its own. And that belief was about to be tested. What Bradley Thornton didn't realize as he laughed that night was this. He wasn't rejecting a stranger. He was publicly humiliating the person who would decide his fate before sunrise. The ballroom of the Grand Monarch Hotel glowed with old money confidence. Crystal chandeliers scattered warm light across silk gowns and tailored suits. The air carried the soft clink of champagne glasses and the low hum of people who had never doubted they belonged in rooms like this. Brenda stepped inside and felt the shift immediately. At the registration desk, a young woman scanned her from head to toe, simple sweater, modest shoes, no visible jewelry. The polite smile thinned. "Name?" the receptionist asked, already skeptical. "Brenda Hayes, Hayes Capital Partners." The tablet confirmed it. No VIP tag, no highlighted instructions, just another name buried in a long list. The receptionist slid over a basic badge without meeting her eyes. "Ballroom straight ahead." Inside, Brenda moved slowly, observing. She didn't rush. She didn't hover. She watched. Bradley Thornton was impossible to miss. Tall, silver-haired, wrapped in effortless authority. He worked the room like it belonged to him. Booming laughs, exaggerated handshakes, easy charm reserved for men who looked like him and wore the right watches. Brenda noticed the pattern quickly. A white investor approached. Bradley beamed, clasped his hand, poured his drink personally. A female board member tried to speak. Bradley barely acknowledged her, eyes drifting elsewhere until she faded away. A black waiter paused slightly while refilling glasses. Bradley snapped, "We're not paying you to stand around." The waiter lowered his head and moved on. No one reacted. Moments later, Brenda overheard him again, voice unguarded. "Diversity quotas. That's what's killing corporate America. Hiring people for optics instead of competence." A few men laughed softly, glancing around to see who might hear. Brenda had seen enough, but she needed one thing more. She straightened her shoulders and walked toward him, calm and professional. "Mr. Thornton," she said evenly, "I'm Brenda Hayes. I've been following your AI division with interest. I'd appreciate a moment to discuss potential opportunities." Bradley turned. His eyes flicked over her. Skin, sweater, shoes. The calculation was instant. His smile vanished. "I don't shake hands with the help." The words rang louder than he expected. Conversation stalled. Heads turned. "Security?" Bradley added, enjoying the attention now. "Who let this woman in? This is an investor gala, not a soup kitchen." A few people laughed. Phones came out. No one intervened. Two security guards stepped in. "Ma'am, you'll need to leave." Brenda didn't argue. She walked with dignity through the marble lobby, past curious stares and silent judgment. Inside, the party resumed. Outside, she stood alone on the sidewalk as laughter spilled through the doors behind her. But someone inside hadn't stopped recording. What no one in that ballroom noticed was the quiet intern in the corner, phone shaking in his hand, capturing the moment that would expose everything by morning. Devon Price locked himself inside the men's restroom, heart pounding so loudly he was sure someone could hear it. At 23, he was 3 months into the internship that was supposed to change his life. His mother had worked 2 jobs for years to help him get here. Now his phone held 4 minutes of footage that could end everything. Bradley Thornton's voice was crystal clear. The laughter, the security guards. The woman's calm expression as she was escorted out. Especially the look she gave the camera at the end. Not angry, not broken, knowing. Devon replayed it once more, his stomach twisting. He texted his college roommate, "I just filmed TRT's CEO saying some wild racist stuff, like, clear as day." The reply came instantly. "Post it. Don't protect him." Devon hesitated. Careers ended for less. Across town, Brenda sat quietly in her hotel suite, still wearing the $40 sweater. She placed the watch on the nightstand and stared at it ticking. She called her husband. "How bad was it?" he asked gently. "He failed completely," she replied. "Worse than I expected." She checked the time. 10:45 p.m. The acquisition would finalize in just over 10 hours. At exactly 9 a.m., she would walk into a boardroom where no one would recognize her at first. Not as the woman from the gala. Not as the one they dismissed. But as the person who now owned the room. Devon backed the video up twice, cloud and email. Then he waited. Morning came fast. At TRT headquarters, Bradley Thornton strode in late, coffee in hand, still riding the high of a successful event. His assistant intercepted him, pale. "There's an emergency board meeting, now." "About what?" he scoffed. "A majority acquisition." Bradley laughed. "Impossible." But when he pushed open the boardroom doors, the laughter died in his throat. Every seat was filled, and in his chair, someone was already sitting. Bradley hadn't recognized her in the ballroom, but as the chair slowly turned, he realized the mistake he made would cost him everything. The chair at the head of the boardroom table rotated slowly. Bradley Thornton froze. The woman who looked back at him was calm, composed, and unmistakable. Same face, same posture, same quiet confidence. The cream sweater, the modest watch. The woman he'd dismissed less than 12 hours earlier now sat in his seat like she'd always belonged there. "Good morning, Mr. Thornton," she said pleasantly. "We met last night, briefly." For a moment, no one spoke. Bradley's mouth opened, then closed. His brain struggled to reconcile what his eyes were seeing. This is a mistake," he finally said. "Who is she?" "Who—" Walter Hoffman, the board chairman, cleared his throat. "That's Brenda Hayes, founder and CEO of Hayes Capital Partners." Brenda placed a folder on the table. As of 9 o'clock this morning, my firm owns 55% of Thornton Ridley Technologies. Silence swallowed the room. Bradley laughed weakly. That's not possible. Our shares are structured to prevent hostile takeovers, Brenda finished. Unless the buyer planned for 3 years, which I did. She nodded toward the folder. You're welcome to verify the filings. Take your time. Bradley's face drained of color as legal counsel whispered urgently into his ear. The truth landed hard. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was ownership. You planned this, he said, anger creeping in. Last night was a setup. Brenda stood slowly. No, last night was a mirror. She looked around the table. I attended your gala without introductions, without security, without status, on purpose. I wanted to see how you treat people you believe have no power. Her eyes returned to him. You answered that question very clearly. Bradley slammed his hand on the table. You embarrassed me. You embarrassed yourself, Brenda replied evenly. I just happened to be present. The room shifted. Board members avoided Bradley's gaze. What none of them knew yet was that this moment, this quiet, devastating reversal, was only the beginning. Bradley thought losing his chair was the worst part. He had no idea what Brenda had uncovered while he was busy laughing at her. At 9:30 a.m., Devon Price finally pressed post. His caption was simple. CEO refuses to shake black woman's hand at investor gala, calls security, plot twist. She bought 55% of his company the next morning. Within minutes, the video exploded. By 10 o'clock, it had crossed 1 million views. By noon, it was everywhere. News feeds, group chats, reaction videos, workplace Slack channels. Comment after comment poured in. The way she smiled at the end, she knew. He really said the help to his new boss. This is karma, in real time. At TRT headquarters, chaos erupted. Phones rang non-stop. Investors demanded explanations. PR teams scrambled to draft statements that no one believed. By midday, the stock had dropped nearly 10%. Bradley locked himself in his office, blinds drawn. His phone buzzed endlessly. He ignored it all, until the board called another meeting. That afternoon, Brenda sat in her temporary office reviewing documents Cassie had overnighted. Files, settlements, NDAs, patterns stretching back over a decade. This isn't just about me, Brenda said quietly. He's done this before. Cassie nodded grimly. 19 complaints, millions paid to silence them. Emails revealed instructions to minimize documentation. Diversity reports that didn't match reality. Numbers adjusted. Truth buried. This goes beyond misconduct, Cassie added. This is fraud. Brenda leaned back, eyes hardening. Then we stopped treating it like a PR problem. She picked up her phone. I want a full board meeting tonight, and I want transparency. At the same time, Bradley's wife sat alone at home, watching the video on repeat. Every laugh, every word, every moment she'd once excused as just how he is. By evening, the building was surrounded by cameras. What was about to happen inside would end careers, expose lies, and force a reckoning no amount of money could erase. That night, under bright lights and rolling cameras, Bradley Thornton would finally be forced to answer a question he'd avoided for 15 years. What happens when silence runs out? By nightfall, Thornton Ridley Technologies no longer felt like a fortress of power. It felt like a courtroom waiting for a verdict. Every light on the executive floor burned bright against the dark sky. News vans crowded the street below. Reporters stood ready, microphones in hand, sensing history unfolding in real time. Inside the largest boardroom, seats filled one by one. Walter Hoffman arrived first, his shoulders heavy with the weight of failure. Failure to see, failure to act. Richard Sims followed, eyes fixed forward, already calculating survival. Other board members entered in silence, each having spent the day reviewing documents that shattered the illusion they had lived under for years. Rachel Thornton arrived alone. She took a seat far from her husband's usual place, her expression calm but resolute. All day she had watched the footage, read the emails, replayed memories she had once dismissed. Tonight, she wasn't here as a wife. She was here as a director. Devon Price sat quietly in the corner beside a small group of approved journalists. Less than 24 hours ago, he'd been invisible. Now, he was a witness. At 8:45 p.m., Bradley Thornton walked in. His suit was flawless, his posture rigid, but his eyes betrayed him, red, frantic, searching for allies and finding none. When he noticed Rachel sitting apart, something in him faltered. "This meeting is confidential," he snapped. "Why is the media here?" Walter didn't look up. "The majority shareholder requested transparency." Bradley clenched his jaw. "This is a violation." "No," Walter replied calmly. "It's governance." At exactly 9 o'clock, the double doors opened. Brenda Hayes entered. Gone was the $40 sweater. She wore a tailored black suit that radiated authority. The same watch circled her wrist, the quiet reminder of who she had always been beneath the surface. The room rose instinctively. Brenda took her seat at the head of the table. "Let's begin," she said. What Bradley didn't realize as he adjusted his tie was that the first thing Brenda planned to show wasn't a document, it was a mirror. The lights dimmed. Every screen in the room came alive with the same image: the ballroom, crystal chandeliers, laughter. A hand extended and left hanging. Bradley's voice filled the room. "I don't shake hands with the help." No one spoke. No one moved. The video played in full, every word, every laugh, every silent face that had allowed it to happen. In this room, it felt different. He couldn't escape it, couldn't spin it, couldn't dismiss it. When the screen went dark, Brenda stood. "That was one night," she said calmly. "One incident, but it wasn't an anomaly." The next slide appeared. 19 formal complaints. 15 years. Names followed. Dates, settlement amounts. "These are employees who reported discrimination, retaliation, and harassment," Brenda continued. "Every case resolved the same way: money, silence, and no accountability." Walter's face went pale. Another slide. Internal emails. Handle internally. Minimize documentation. Another. Diversity reports. Public claims beside internal data. 23% minority leadership, Brenda read aloud. Actual number, 6%. A murmur rippled through the room. "This isn't just unethical," she said. "It's fraud." Bradley stood abruptly. "This is an ambush. These issues were handled." "Yes," Brenda replied evenly. "Handled for you." She turned to face him directly. "In 15 years, did you ever apologize?" Bradley opened his mouth. No words came. "I didn't engineer anything," she continued. "I showed up politely. You chose who you wanted to be." She returned to her seat. "I move for a vote of no confidence." The room held its breath. This wasn't just about power anymore. It was about truth, finally spoken out loud. In the next moments, 7 people would decide whether a man who ruled without consequence for decades would finally face one. The air in the boardroom felt heavy, like the moment before a storm breaks. Walter Hoffman adjusted his glasses, hands trembling just enough to betray the weight of what he was about to do. "We'll proceed with a roll call vote," he said. "A vote of no confidence in Bradley Thornton as CEO." Bradley stood rigid, eyes fixed forward, jaw clenched. "Richard Sims," Walter began. The CFO didn't hesitate. "In favor." Bradley's head snapped toward him. 12 years of loyalty collapsed in a single word. "Margaret Davis," she swallowed hard. "In favor." "Thomas Wright." A pause. Wright had vacationed with Bradley, watched his children grow up, defended him more times than he could count. Slowly, he exhaled. "In favor." Bradley's face tightened. "David Miller." "In favor." The room shifted as all eyes turned to the far end of the table. "Rachel Thornton." Bradley turned fully toward his wife. "Rachel," he whispered, "you don't have to do this." She stood, her voice steady but final. "I do." She looked around the room once, then back at him. "I've watched you treat people like this for years. I told myself it was pressure, or ambition, or misunderstanding." Her gaze didn't waver. "That video took away my excuses. She took a breath. In favor. Bradley staggered slightly, gripping the table. Walter cleared his throat. As chairman, I also vote in favor. He set down his pen. The motion passes unanimously. The words hung in the air like a gavel strike. Effective immediately, Walter continued. Bradley Thornton is removed as CEO of Thornton Ridley Technologies. Cameras captured everything. Bradley stood frozen, decades of authority evaporating in seconds. You can't do this, he whispered. I built this company. Brenda rose slowly. No, she said. You used it. She stepped closer. It belongs to the people who trusted you, and the people you silenced. Security approached. As Bradley was escorted out, reporters' flashes lit the hallway he once ruled. As Bradley disappeared behind the doors, Brenda wasn't finished, because accountability doesn't end with removal. The aftermath hit like waves. Within hours, Bradley Thornton's resignation dominated headlines. Federal investigators announced inquiries into discrimination practices and misleading disclosures. Subpoenas followed. TRT's stock dipped hard, then stabilized. Investors, it turned out, valued honesty more than image. The next morning, Brenda released 19 employees from their non-disclosure agreements. For the first time, they were allowed to speak. Stories emerged. Quiet at first, then unstoppable. A former manager described being told she was a diversity hire. An engineer recalled being passed over repeatedly, despite top reviews. Another spoke of retaliation after reporting misconduct. Each voice added weight. Each truth reshaped the narrative. A class action lawsuit followed. TRT settled months later for millions. More importantly, policies changed, leadership changed, culture began, slowly, to change. Devon Price didn't return to his internship. Instead, Brenda offered him a position at Hayes Capital Partners. Courage matters, she told him. More than comfort. Rachel Thornton filed for divorce. Her settlement went to organizations supporting workplace equity. When asked why, she said simply, silence is expensive. Months later, Brenda sat in her new office at TRT headquarters. The same building, a different future. On her desk sat a photograph of her mother in her nursing uniform. Beside it, the watch. Cassie knocked. Devon's here. Brenda stood and extended her hand. This time it was met. If you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or told you didn't belong, remember this. Power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits for the moment truth finally speaks. The vote was over. 7 hands had been raised. 7 voices had spoken. Some hesitated, some did not, but the result was final. Bradley Thornton stood frozen at the end of the table, as if the air itself had turned to stone around him. Walter Hoffman set his pen down slowly. By unanimous decision, he said, his voice heavy, Bradley Thornton is hereby removed as Chief Executive Officer of Thornton Ridley Technologies, effective immediately. The words echoed, not loudly, but permanently. Bradley's face twisted, disbelief cracking into something smaller. You can't do this, he said hoarsely. I built this company. Brenda rose from her chair. No, she said calmly. You controlled it. You did not build it alone. You did not own the people. And you did not earn the right to treat them as disposable. She stepped closer, measured and unhurried. You believed power meant never being questioned. That money could erase harm. That silence meant consent. Her voice never rose. Tonight, those beliefs end. Security entered quietly. No spectacle, no shouting, just procedure. As Bradley was escorted toward the door, cameras followed every step. He stopped briefly near Devon Price. You ruined everything, Bradley spat. Devon met his eyes steadily. No, sir, you did. I just made sure people saw it. The doors closed behind him. Was closed. Inside the room, no one spoke for several seconds. Something irreversible had happened, not just to a man, but to a culture that had protected him. Brenda returned to the head of the table. We're not finished, she said. We're just beginning. What happened next wouldn't just change one company. It would force an entire industry to reckon with what it had ignored for decades. The fallout was immediate and relentless. By morning, Bradley Thornton's removal dominated headlines across the country. Financial networks replayed the gala footage alongside breaking news banners. Analysts debated not whether the board had acted correctly, but why it had taken so long. Federal agencies opened formal inquiries. Subpoenas followed: the buried settlements, the falsified diversity numbers, the internal emails. What had once been hidden behind NDAs and legal jargon now sat under public scrutiny. Thornton Ridley Technologies' stock dipped sharply, then stabilized. Investors, it turned out, preferred truth to denial. Within weeks, 19 former employees were released from their non-disclosure agreements. For the first time, they spoke, not with rage, but with relief. Stories poured out, patterns became undeniable, and for many, the most powerful moment wasn't the settlement checks, it was being believed. Brenda declined interviews. She didn't need them. Instead, she announced sweeping reforms: independent oversight, transparent reporting, a complete leadership restructuring. Devon Price received a call one afternoon. "Would you like to come work with us?" Brenda asked. He didn't hesitate. Rachel Thornton filed for divorce quietly. When asked why she voted the way she did, she answered simply, "Because silence is a decision. I chose differently." Months later, Brenda stood in her new office at TRT headquarters. The same building, a different future. On her desk sat one photograph, her mother in a nurse's uniform. Beside it, the old watch still ticking steadily. Power, she knew now, wasn't about being seen. It was about what you did when you finally were. And yet, the most important moment of this story wasn't the vote. It was the handshake that never happened, and what it revealed about who truly belonged. The security guards escorted Bradley Thornton through the main entrance, just as Brenda had instructed. Cameras flashed relentlessly, reporters shouted questions he didn't answer. His head stayed down as he passed the very spot where, the night before, he had ordered another human being removed for not belonging. Now, the world watched as he was the one being removed. Inside the building, the board meeting continued. But the atmosphere had changed. Something heavy had lifted. Brenda remained seated at the head of the table, calm but resolute. "This company doesn't need revenge," she said. "It needs repair." Over the next hours, decisions were made swiftly. Interim leadership was appointed. Independent investigators were brought in. NDAs were suspended. Victims were contacted, not with lawyers, but with apologies. Within days, former employees began speaking publicly. Stories long buried surfaced one by one. Each echoed the same pattern: humiliation, silence, payoff, repeat. Markets responded in ways no one expected. After an initial drop, TRT stock stabilized. Then it climbed. Investors trusted transparency more than fear. Brenda declined interviews. She didn't post statements. She let actions speak. Weeks later, she stood alone in her new office at TRT headquarters. The view was familiar: Baltimore's harbor stretching out under the sun. On her desk sat a framed photograph of her mother in a nursing uniform. Beside it, the old watch ticked steadily. Cassie knocked softly. "Devon's here." "First day." The young man stepped in, nervous but proud. "You know why I hired you?" Brenda said. "Not because of the video, but because you chose integrity when it cost you something." She stood and extended her hand. This time, it was taken. That night, Brenda looked out at the city lights and allowed herself a quiet smile. Not for the victory, but for the truth. Power had finally answered to character. If this story shows us anything, it's this: people will always reveal who they are when they believe no one important is watching. And sometimes, the person they underestimate isn't powerless, just patient. If you've ever been dismissed, overlooked, or judged before you were heard, leave a comment below. Have you ever been underestimated, only for the truth to come out later? Your story might be someone else's strength. Like this video if you believe respect should never be optional. Subscribe for more powerful real-life inspired stories like this. And don't go anywhere. On the next story, a young black girl is accused of causing trouble in first class, until the flight attendant freezes when her father steps onto the plane. Trust me. You don't want to miss what happens next.